The night sky over Earth was no longer a canvas of stars but a battlefield, seared with fire and thunder. Alien warships filled the heavens in terrible formation, their hulls gleaming with the menace of an empire that had conquered countless worlds. From orbit, the Zorith Dominion descended with the full weight of its fury, determined to crush the defiance that had unsettled its pride. Commander Kael'Rin sat rigid in his command chair, his gaze locked on the planet below. He had studied humanity's history, their endless cycles of conflict, their brutality toward their own kind. He knew now why others had hesitated. But knowledge did not change duty. The Dominion demanded victory. On the ground, Colonel Marcus Hale stood amid the flicker of dying floodlights, his men arrayed in ragged lines behind him. They were tired, their uniforms stained with mud and blood, but not one man wavered. Hale's presence was their anchor, his voice steady as steel despite the quaking earth beneath their boots. "Listen well," he said, his words carrying through the makeshift camp. "They come now with everything they have. They believe the weight of their fleet will break us. They believe fear will undo us. But fear is nothing new to mankind. We've lived with it, fought with it, and used it to sharpen our blades. Tonight we prove that Earth does not bow." Dr. Adrian Locke stood at his side, exhaustion etched into his features, yet his eyes blazed with conviction. "They think they face soldiers," he said, his voice carrying through the gathered men. "But what they face is all of us, our history, our fury, our refusal to die quietly. Let them come. They'll learn what it means to mistake predators for prey." The ground trembled as the first wave struck. Alien craft screamed through the clouds, raining destruction on cities and strongholds alike. Entire districts lit up with fire, towers crumbling as if swept aside by an invisible hand. But Hale's men did not scatter. They moved with grim precision, activating traps laid in advance. Hidden artillery emplacements, mines disguised in the terrain, even the demolition of bridges and tunnels to funnel the enemy into kill zones. Every explosion that tore into alien steel was met with a cheer, a defiant roar that rose above the chaos. Kael'Rin watched in cold astonishment as the battle reports streamed in. Losses mounted at a rate he had never seen when facing a primitive species. Earth's weapons were crude, but their deployment was cunning, improvisation that bent every advantage from terrain and timing. He saw guerrilla fighters melt into forests to ambush armored columns, civilians wielding nothing more than rifles and firebombs against mechanized patrols. Every loss the humans suffered only seemed to harden their resolve. "Why do they not break?" Vorax snarled, disbelief cracking his arrogance. "Every species breaks when faced with the Dominion. Every one." Kael'Rin's gaze was heavy, his voice grim. "Because war is not a stranger to them. It is their oldest companion." Below, Hale's command post shook as an alien strike landed nearby, hurling men and debris into the air. He staggered to his feet, coughing through the dust, and dragged a wounded soldier upright with iron grip. "Stand!" he barked, his voice carrying even as the world around them burned. "You are not finished until your heart stops beating." His men, bloodied but unbowed, rallied once more, their lines tightening against the onslaught. Locke stumbled to his side, wiping ash from his face. "Marcus, we can't hold like this forever." Hale's eyes burned with a light Locke had seen only in the most desperate of men. "Then we don't hold. We bleed them until they choke on it." The battle raged into the night. Alien ships leveled neighborhoods, only to find themselves ensnared by improvised traps that turned rubble into weapons. Human fighters struck and vanished, their every move an echo of centuries of conflict. Kael'Rin watched through the feeds, his mind torn between disbelief and admiration. This was no ordinary resistance. This was survival honed into savagery. At the height of the battle, Kael'Rin ordered a full ground deployment, thousands of soldiers descending in waves to overwhelm the defenders. He expected terror, expected retreat. Instead, he witnessed something that froze even his hardened spirit. The humans charged to meet them. With rifles, blades, bare fists if nothing else, they hurled themselves into the fray, shouting defiance, their war cries rising into a single thunderous roar. It was not organized, it was not elegant, but it was unstoppable in its raw fury. Hale fought among them, his rifle empty long before his determination. He wielded a fallen alien weapon, its unfamiliar weight balanced by the iron in his hands. Each strike, each order shouted above the din, drove his men to fight harder. He was not merely a commander. He was the embodiment of their defiance, a symbol that Earth would never kneel. From orbit, Kale Rin's composure finally cracked. He rose from his chair, his voice low but seething with realization. This is why no empire has conquered them. They are not defenseless. They are death itself, disguised in fragile flesh. He turned to Vorak, whose face had drained of all arrogance. If we stay, we lose not only ships, not only men, we lose the Dominion itself. For this world will devour us as it has devoured all who dared before. On the ground, Locke found Hale amid the wreckage, both men bloodied and exhausted, yet alive. Alien forces, once so confident, were breaking, retreating in disarray. The sky above filled with streaks of fire as the Dominion fleet pulled away, abandoning its conquest. "They're leaving," Locke said in awe, his voice hoarse. Hale lowered the alien rifle, his breath ragged. He watched the lights vanish into the heavens, and only then did he allow himself to sit heavily on the rubble. "They'll remember," he said, voice like gravel. "And they'll warn others." Locke nodded slowly, the weight of the moment sinking into him. "Perhaps that's enough. Perhaps that's why no one comes here. They all learn the same truth. Earth doesn't need shields or fleets. We are the weapon." Hale gave a weary half-smile, his eyes still fixed on the empty sky. "Let them tell the stars. Let them spread the warning. This is our home. And we will always fight for it." High above, Kale Rin stood at the viewport of his retreating flagship, staring down at the planet that had humbled him. He knew he could not return, not with the shame of failure etched so deeply. But he carried something more dangerous than defeat. He carried knowledge. He would tell the Dominion, he would tell all who would listen. Earth was no prize. It was a graveyard waiting to claim the arrogant. The planet turned slowly below, clouds shifting across its surface, storms rolling across oceans and continents. To the unknowing eye, it seemed fragile, beautiful, almost defenseless. But Kale Rin now understood the truth. Earth was not defenseless. It was a beast clothed in humanity, and its claws were sharper than any blade. On the ruins of the battlefield, Hale sat with his men, the fires of war still glowing in the distance. The storm had not ended, it never truly would, but for now they had survived. He closed his eyes, and for the first time since the skies had burned, he allowed himself to breathe. Smoke still curled from the craters where alien craft had fallen, their twisted frames jutting from the mud like the bones of slain beasts. The base reeked of ozone and scorched steel, but the soldiers who had survived the clash stood taller, their exhaustion worn like a badge of honor. Colonel Marcus Hale moved among them, his boots sinking into sodden ground, his words few but steady. He had learned long ago that men drew strength not from speeches but from the simple presence of someone who refused to falter. Dr. Adrian Locke trailed him, his eyes darting constantly from the sky to the wreckage. The scientist's hands shook as he crouched near the remains of an alien hull, rain sizzling on still-hot metal. He ran a trembling palm along the smooth surface, marveling at its seamless design. "This shouldn't be possible," Locke whispered. "We crippled them with relics, Marcus." Relics. Their alloys, their shielding systems. Hundreds of years ahead of us at least. And yet they bled. "They made a mistake," Hale replied, voice rough from shouting commands. "They thought we'd crumble." He glanced at the distant horizon, where black smoke bled into the clouds. "Now they'll come back sharper. Stronger." Locke rose, squaring his shoulders though his expression was troubled. Which means we have to be sharper still. Marcus, don't you see? This is the proof. Humanity's weapon isn't steel or firepower. It's something else entirely. Before Hale could answer, a transmission crackled over the comms, distorted by interference but unmistakably alien in origin. The voice was Caelryn's, translated by the Dominion's adaptive systems into harsh, clipped English. You resist. Unexpected. Inefficient. Explain. The words hung in the command center like a blade suspended above their heads. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Hale stood motionless for a long moment before leaning toward the console. His reply was measured, deliberate. You came here thinking we were weak. You were wrong. Silence answered, then the transmission cut. Above the world, Caelryn reclined in his command chair, the human's defiance replaying across his mind. He had expected submission, perhaps token resistance, but not this, never this. The sight of their battered forces fighting with a madness that bordered on exhilaration gnawed at him. These were not prey creatures. They were something far stranger. Vorik, ever eager to dismiss, snarled at his side. They got lucky. Nothing more. Their machines are crude, their tactics reckless. We will adapt and crush them in the next strike. Caelryn's gaze sharpened. Do you not wonder, strategist, why no other empire has taken this world? Why in the chronicles, every attempt ends with silence? Vorik's sneer faltered, but he recovered quickly. Legends. Superstition. The galaxy is rife with ghost stories. Not legends, Caelryn murmured. He turned to the archives, summoning files sealed so long ago that even his authority strained to unlock them. Lines of text scrolled across his console, fragments of forgotten reports, expedition logs abruptly ending mid-sentence, casualty counts listed but never explained. Empires far mightier than the Dominion had once taken interest in this planet, yet none had claimed it. Their fates were absent, as though swallowed whole by the void. Back on Earth, Hale and Locke studied the captured wreckage under flickering floodlights. Soldiers guarded the perimeter, weapons raised against a threat that might descend again at any moment. Hale crouched, his eyes narrowing at the jagged tear where missile had pierced alien armor. Locke spoke quietly, his tone almost reverent. Do you understand what this means? They measure strength in fleets, in shields, in precision. But us, we measure it in scars. Every war we fought against ourselves was training for this. The world wars, the deserts, the jungles. Every brutal lesson we carved into history prepared us. Hale ran a hand across the ruined hull. His voice was grim, almost reluctant. Prepared us to kill better than anyone else. Locke straightened, his gaze sharp. Exactly. They look at our divisions and see weakness. But it's the opposite. We've spent millennia testing every way to destroy ourselves. What they're seeing now is survival distilled into instinct. Hale met his eyes, the flicker of stormlight glinting in both. You're saying this curse of ours, this endless fighting, might be the one thing that saves us? I'm saying it's the reason they should be afraid. In orbit, Caelryn pored over the human histories, transmitted from intercepted broadcasts. He watched images of tanks grinding across Europe, cities leveled by firestorms, mushroom clouds blooming into the heavens. He saw trench lines where millions bled into mud, deserts where guerrillas shredded armies 10 times their size, jungles where men vanished into shadows to strike again and again. Each fragment painted the same truth. Humanity was not united, yet they were relentless. Every conflict, every horror had only made them sharper. He leaned back, chilled by revelation. They do not fear death, he whispered to himself. They embrace it as the cost of victory. Vorik snorted, though unease flickered across his features. So what? They are but one world. One world cannot stand against the Dominion. Caelryn's eyes burned like embers. And yet no one has claimed it. Ask yourself why. On Earth, Hale stood once more before his men, their faces smeared with grime and exhaustion. He spoke not to rouse but to steal them. They will come again. Stronger, angrier. But every time they hit us we learn. Every time they bleed us we bite harder. That's how we've always fought. And that's how we'll survive this. The men nodded, jaws set. The fire in their eyes a reflection of their commander's unyielding stance. Locke watched in silence, recognizing the truth Hale embodied. Humanity's strength was not in the machines it built, but in its refusal to surrender, no matter the cost. In the cold void, Kale Rin turned from the screens, his decision forming like iron in his chest. This was no longer a simple conquest. This was a test of survival, predator against predator. And for the first time in his long career, he was uncertain whether he stood on the stronger side. He issued new orders with a voice that carried the weight of unease. Ready the fleet. The next strike will be decisive. We will break them, or we will learn why none before us returned. On Earth, Hale stared at the bruised sky, listening to the distant rumble of thunder that had yet to fade. He could almost feel their eyes watching, waiting. His jaw tightened. The storm was not over. The storm had only begun. The first shapes pierced through the storm clouds like shadows given form, their hulls sleek and glinting with alien alloys that no human eye had ever seen. They descended in formation, cutting through the sky above the coastal base with terrifying precision. Sirens wailed almost instantly across the compound as soldiers scrambled to their stations, eyes wide with disbelief at the impossible intruders. Colonel Marcus Hale stood rooted at the command platform, his weather-beaten face calm as chaos erupted around him. His heart clenched, but he betrayed no fear. He had waited for this moment. "They've breached the atmosphere," shouted one of his officers, his voice almost breaking. No warning, no declaration, just "they're here." Hale's eyes narrowed. He had expected nothing less. These were not conquerors who came to negotiate. They came to seize. His voice cut through the confusion with the sharpness of a blade. "Sound full alert. Seal the hangars. Activate the ground batteries." The soldiers obeyed, though many of them glanced upward as the alien vessels began their slow, menacing sweep over the base. The ships moved with a predatory grace, humming with an energy that shook the air. Lightning from the passing storm illuminated their underbellies, casting them as creatures of nightmare against the sky. Inside the command center, Dr. Adrian Locke leaned over the displays, his fingers trembling not from fear but from exhilaration. "Magnificent," he breathed. "You see this, Marcus? Look at the engineering, those hull geometries. No rivets, no seams. They must be using adaptive resonance alloys." "Adrian!" Hale's voice was a warning. "Focus." Locke tore his gaze from the screen, his enthusiasm tempered by the urgency in Hale's tone. He swallowed, then nodded. "Right. Their weapons will be unlike anything we've prepared for. But their systems may not be hardened against electromagnetic disruption. The storm could give us a window." Hale considered the words, his mind already weaving strategy out of scraps. Earth was weak in comparison, yes, but not helpless. Not if he could make use of every ounce of chaos the world itself offered. The first shot came without warning. A lance of searing light ripped down from one of the alien ships, striking a storage facility at the edge of the base. The building disintegrated in a blossom of flame, debris scattering across the rain-soaked runway. Soldiers flinched, some ducking instinctively, but Hale did not move. "They want fear," Hale muttered almost to himself. Then louder, "Return fire." The ground batteries roared, sending old but reliable missiles screaming skyward. Their contrails cut across the storm clouds, primitive spears thrown at gods. Several missiles detonated too soon, scrambled by alien interference fields. But two slipped through, streaking toward the nearest craft. The alien vessel swerved with uncanny agility, yet one missile struck its flank. For an instant, the ship's energy field shimmered and collapsed, sparks erupting as the warhead tore a ragged scar across its hull. The alien craft reeled, then stabilized, banking away. The base erupted in cheers, short-lived but fierce. Hale allowed himself a grim smile. "Bleed them," he ordered. "Show them we don't fold." In orbit, Commander Kael'Rin leaned forward as reports flooded into the flagship. "Damage sustained?" he asked, voice clipped. "Minor," Vorik replied, though irritation laced his tone. "One strike. A statistical fluke." Kael'Rin's gaze sharpened. "No, not a fluke. They struck true in the midst of chaos. And they cheer for it." He could see the humans' defiance even through the filtered drone feeds. The colonel's commands carried through body language alone, men snapping to, rallying under impossible odds. It stirred something uneasily familiar. Not discipline born of empire, but desperation honed into something lethal. Back on the ground, Hale stalked the command floor. His boots splashing through rainwater tracked in from outside. "Locke," he said, his tone urgent but calm. "Your idea about the storm. How fast can we make it work?" Locke's fingers flew over the controls. "The atmospheric conditions are perfect. If we can synchronize our EMP coils with the lightning strikes, we might fry their sensor arrays for just a few seconds." He looked up, eyes alight with manic determination. "A few seconds is all your men need, isn't it?" Hale's lips thinned into something resembling a smile. "Exactly." Orders rippled through the base. Teams hauled out jury-rigged devices, coils wired into the power grid, cables snaking into the mud. Soldiers prepared shoulder-mounted launchers, knowing their chances were slim but refusing to yield. Above, the alien ships circled back for another pass, their energy weapons pulsing with ominous light. The sky cracked open with thunder. Lightning forked across the heavens, and in that instant, Locke's calculations bore fruit. A surge of electromagnetic energy burst outward from the coils, piggybacking on the storm's natural fury. Alien sensors flickered, their targeting beams stuttering. For the briefest heartbeat, their machines faltered. "Now!" Hale roared. Missiles fired in volleys, streaking upward with a ferocity born not of technology but of sheer human audacity. Several found their marks. Explosions rocked the sky as two alien vessels spun out of formation, their hulls aflame. The base shook with the force of their crashes, shock waves rolling across the tarmac. Soldiers hooped and shouted, their fear transmuted into a burning pride. Kael'Rin watched in silence as the feed showed the destruction. His jaw tightened. "Primitive weapons," he murmured. "Yet they find ways to bite." Vorik scowled. "We underestimated their ingenuity. It will not happen again." But Kael'Rin did not answer immediately. He studied the human commander, the one barking orders with steady authority, unshaken by the fire raining from the heavens. Kael'Rin did not know his name, but he saw in him something dangerous, resolve unbroken by terror. On the ground, Hale surveyed the wreckage with grim satisfaction. But his relief was short-lived. The alien ships regrouped, their weapons growing brighter, their movements more cautious now. He could feel it, they were beginning to respect the fight. And respect from predators meant escalation. Locke appeared at his side, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. His voice was tight with awe and dread. "They'll come harder now. You've shown them we're not prey." Hale gave a curt nod. "Then we keep teaching them." He turned back to his men, his voice carrying above the storm. "They think we'll break. Show them what happens when they're wrong." The soldiers roared in reply, a sound more primal than disciplined, the sound of men who refused to yield their home. It carried across the base, defiance wrapped in thunder. Above, Kael'Rin closed his eyes briefly. The humans had bled under the first strike, yet they stood taller for it. For the first time, he felt the faint stir of unease curl into something sharper. This was not conquest. This was the beginning of a reckoning. The Zorith fleet withdrew from immediate range, leaving smoking wreckage and smoldering craters behind. Hale watched them vanish into the storm clouds, fists clenched at his sides. He knew this was no victory, only a pause. The real war had just begun. Marcus, Locke said softly, his voice trembling. They'll be back. Hale's eyes, hard as stone, remained fixed on the sky. Then so will we. The storm raged on, a mirror of the conflict yet to come. The stars stretched like a silver tapestry across the viewport of the Zorith Dominion flagship, their cold brilliance reflected in the obsidian armor of Commander Kael'Rin. He stood with hands clasped behind his back, his posture taut, his crimson eyes fixed on the pale blue planet hanging in the void. Earth, as its inhabitants called it, revolved with quiet indifference, unaware of the predator looming beyond its skies. They have no shields, said strategist Vorak, his tone mocking as he manipulated the holodisplay. Lines of data floated in the air, projections of Earth's military strength, or lack thereof. No orbital defenses, no planetary fleet, no centralized command. A fractured species still locked in tribal disputes. He turned with a sharp-toothed grin. One decisive strike, Commander. That is all it would take. Kael'Rin did not respond immediately. His gaze lingered on the rotating sphere. To him, Earth looked insignificant, a backwater world unworthy of serious consideration. And yet, a whisper of unease stirred within him, faint as static. The Dominion had charted hundreds of systems, subjugated dozens of intelligent species, yet Earth remained untouched. No banners of conquest fluttered here, no imperial garrisons were stationed on its soil. For a world so apparently defenseless, its silence in the Galactic chronicles was puzzling. Tell me, Vorak, Kael'Rin said at last, his voice low and deliberate, why has no other power seized this world already? Vorak's grin faltered. Perhaps oversight, perhaps distance. The nearest warp lanes are unstable. It is of no consequence. Perhaps, Kael'Rin murmured. He turned away from the viewport, shadows rippling across his angular features. Yet the question festered in his mind. Civilizations as fragile as this one were usually swallowed whole within a century of being discovered. And still, Earth spun in peace, or something resembling it. Far below, on the planet's surface, Colonel Marcus Hale stood at the edge of a rain-slicked tarmac, the scent of jet fuel mingling with the storm-thick air. The coastal military installation sprawled around him in gray concrete and rusting steel, relics of an older era. He drew a slow breath, his jaw tightening as thunder rolled across the horizon. To most men, the storm would seem oppressive. To Hale it was a familiar companion. "Colonel," called a voice behind him. Dr. Adrian Locke emerged from the hangar, his lab coat whipping in the wind, spectacles fogged with rain. He looked more scholar than soldier, but Hale knew better than to underestimate him. Locke's mind cut sharper than any blade. "You dragged me out here to watch the weather," Locke said, brushing water from his brow with irritation. Hale's eyes didn't leave the sky. "They're up there." Locke blinked, then smirked. "Ah, so the old rumors weren't just rumors after all." "Not anymore." Hale's tone was steady, but beneath it lay a current of grim resolve. He had served in wars, seen the cost of arrogance and the cruelty of invasion. Whatever hung above their skies, it would not find Earth unprepared. Not entirely. Locke followed his gaze, his expression darkening. "And how do we intend to greet them? Slings and stones. Our fleet is a joke, Marcus. Half the satellites are decades old, our missile systems outdated. By all metrics, we are defenseless." Hale finally turned to face him. His weathered features were carved with the lines of a man who had seen too much, but his eyes burned with quiet intensity. "You know better than anyone, Adrian. It isn't the weapons that matter. It's the men who wield them." Locke studied him for a long moment, then gave a dry chuckle. "Yes, the great human asset. Stubbornness wrapped in flesh and bone. We never did learn how to stop fighting each other. Maybe now we'll see if that endless brawling served a purpose." Above, the Zorith reconnaissance drones pierced the atmosphere, their sleek forms invisible to the human eye. They catalogued cities, power grids, military outposts. They watched traffic choke highways, watched governments argue in sterile chambers, watched soldiers march in fractured commands. To the Zoreth, it was confirmation of weakness. Kael'Rin examined the reports with detached scrutiny. Fragmented, chaotic, lacking discipline. And yet, he paused, narrowing his eyes. One drone feed replayed a sequence of human riots, soldiers clashing in streets, civilians hurling fire at armored vehicles. The savagery shocked even him. They fight themselves with such fury, he muttered. Vorik scoffed. All the better for us. They cannot unite. Conquest will be simple. Perhaps, Kael'Rin said again, though doubt now edged his thoughts. He had read the whispers, the forgotten notes in the Dominion's archives. Earth, some records claimed, was a grave world. Armies that landed here centuries past had vanished without explanation. The files ended abruptly, sealed by authority beyond his reach. Still, he silenced his unease. The Dominion thrived on strength, not superstition. And by every visible measure, humanity was weak. On Earth, Hale walked the length of the base with Locke at his side, the storm pressing harder now. Generators hummed, soldiers drilled, mechanics struggled to keep ancient machinery alive. It was a fragile facade of strength, and both men knew it. Yet Hale's stride was unwavering. They'll come soon, he said. Locke frowned. And when they do, then we show them what it means to mistake Earth for easy prey. The storm broke in a torrent of rain, drumming against the steel roofs, drowning the airfield in gray. Hale lifted his eyes once more, as though he could pierce the clouds and see the warships beyond. His lips pressed into a hard line. Far above, Kael'Rin issued the order. Prepare a test incursion. We will strike swiftly, a single claw before the full hand closes. Let us measure their response. Vorik bowed, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. It will be over before they comprehend what has begun. But Kael'Rin lingered at the viewport, his gaze fixed on Earth's storm-racked surface. For the first time in many cycles, uncertainty gnawed at him. The humans below seemed fragile, disorganized, weak. And yet something in their storm-bound planet mirrored the look in Colonel Hale's eyes, though Kael'Rin could not possibly know it. Something that warned him conquest would not come easily. The Zoreth fleet began its descent.